Welcome to From Pixels to Celluloid, a podcast dedicated to the discussion of video game adaptations.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of From Pixels to Celluloid, a podcast about video game adaptations. I am your host, well, one half of the host. I am the Hypersonic 55, and I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Vincent.
Hey,
I love the energy. That was wonderful. Thank you.
yeah,
How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Start of the year, kind of. Yeah, as seen from my energy, almost done with January. Like, I think it's gonna be the longest stretch of January from here on in. Because yeah, things like January don't seem to end, and they will fight tooth and nail for every last second of it.
Yeah, I mean, since I've ended up like swapping back to working monthly, that whole horrible period where you have to wait to be paid, instead of like, being paid in 4 weeks, you have to wait like, 5 to 6. It's the most horrific feeling ever. And while I'm not like completely like out of funds, it's just that need where you're just like, your payday is so far away. I just want money. Just let me have my money. I need it now. So yeah, you could tell that I'm like not in the best of states when looking forward to my funds. But other than that, I'm okay. But like you said, January just feels like a very dead month. There's not really much been going on. I mean, for us in the UK, we got Nosferatu finally, and I didn't get around to watching it until like what a few days ago.
Mm.
Um, and I enjoyed it. It was definitely like one of the last films of like 2024 that I really wanted to see, and I thought it was good. Like presentation wise, it was fantastic, and the performances were mostly good. It's just that I don't know, it just didn't wow me the way I wanted it to, which
hmm
I think would be a surprise to hear from most people because I know there was a lot of people that either loved it or said that even though it's not like Robert Eggers' best movie, they still think it's like, top tier material. So I don't know. That's just how I felt about that, really.
Well, I watched Nosferatu and I really enjoyed it and I did love it. I do have it as one of my picks of the year. But then again, it I would say the film is I would say entry level art house for the mainstream crowd. It's still
Mm.
still very much art house, especially the first hour of the movie where the director Eggers he really went for his like full on impressionist arc, right? Like the
Mm.
whole long shots in the hallways and the reveals, the really slow reveals, and but yeah, the one thing that I love about it is like how yeah, like it's great how just the terror, the sheer terror of the vampire, like the concept of a vampire, because like basically, right, yeah, Eggers did what Chainsaw Man did with guns, like how they've brought back the terror that is the vampire. Where, like right now when we hear about vampires, we just go vampires, like really, like they sparkle, right? But with this one, and great job for the rest of the cast. The cast like did a fantastic job because you just can't rely on the monster to deliver the scares. Like everybody has to be in on the con, Nicholas Hoult was amazing, you could really feel the stress and the absolute terror that he went through being cut down to like the basic parts. And yeah,
Yeah.
Lily Rose Depp did such a great job of having that trauma from the very start of her life, just being tormented by this entity. Yeah, like you could feel that from the get-go, and it just doesn't stop until like the end credits. And that sheer visceral terror that you feel from inside of you, it's like a body terror, your body feels it. It's not just like a brain terror where you're like, oh, that's scary, you think about it, but then like your body feels it. And yeah, I would say, yeah, Eggers did a good job in conveying that. I did watch the movie with your uncle, and I think he slept through like a good chunk of it. So
No. Wow, I see. Okay.
yeah,
It
but
was it like a
yeah, that's why I'm saying like it's it's like entry level art house is definitely not for everybody. But at the same time, it's palatable enough for mainstream audiences that they can get behind it, and probably with a couple of watches, because like art house cinema is of a certain sentiment, and I like when I was a newbie with art house cinema back in when I started getting into film festivals in my
yeah.
mid 20s. Same thing. It's like, why is everything so meditative? Why is everything so freaking slow? But the thing is, like, that's what it is. Like, you the first part of most of these movies is like getting you into the world and having you suspend your disbelief enough to like adjust to this hyper reality where like why would I watch this movie when I can be just like be bored at home alone looking at my like regular life as it passes by. But yeah, I get it, like that's the appeal of it for a lot of people, I guess. It is of a certain sentiment. It is of a certain taste. So yeah, I do understand the whole enjoying it, but not completely loving it.
Yeah, so again, it's annoying because the thing is, whenever you say that you don't love something, someone will just be like, "Okay, so you hate it. You're an idiot." And I'm like, "No, that is not what I said." Again, like I still haven't seen The Lighthouse yet, but from like the other two films of like Eggers's like filmography, he
Hmm.
has such a distinctive style when it comes
Yeah.
to how he presents things. And this film had just stunning,
Hmm.
stunning presentation, just the lighting and the way things were presented. There were so many sort of moments where you could literally just like, pause. That's a poster. That's wallpaper. That's something you can stick on your wall. That's something where you could just feel the full sense of immersion. It doesn't feel like anywhere that's in the real world. And if it is, it's just like some weird Twilight Zone messed up version of it. And I was just like really floored by like some of the cinematography, and some of the scene transition was
Oh
just
yeah,
so odd and dreamlike. And I was just like, how do you even come up with that? But it's so good. So yeah, I mean, I think besides the performances, it was really the presentation that literally just had me like zoomed in 100%. But maybe I should give it another watch and maybe my opinion might change. But as it stands, again, liked it a lot, but didn't love it.
totally. Speaking of liking it but not exactly loving it, Sonic 3.
Ah, okay. I
So
knew we
I
were going to come to
finally
this.
yeah. So I finally watched it in the theaters, and just a confession, like I watched Sonic 1 and 2 back to back when it dropped in Paramount Plus, and I was completely surprised. Like Sonic 1 was fantastic. I was going like, yeah, like this is how you should do a video game adaptation. It really reminded me of like a lot of like I would say like when I was in 13, 14 time when you're like you're still a kid, but you're still you want to see something a little bit more edgy, something a little bit more cooler. And I think that's the when like the first like Ninja Turtles came out in like 93.
Yeah,
Yeah, like all the like Goonies, for example, like yeah, like that type of family feat like that type of family movies that came out. Even the Ninja Turtle movies, like the rubber suits. The first one had this like darkness to it, right? That
yeah.
I wouldn't say like Sonic had this darkness to it. It has this grounded level to it, like
Hmm.
he's in the real world. He was sent here. He didn't really have much of a choice making the best out of his life, and then he meets the James Marsden character, right? And then yeah, like it's a fish out of water story that really worked well. Second movie, it leaned more into like the family aspect of the genre, right? Like I don't know, like I really don't have a lot of memories of the second movie, like especially of with the human characters. But I still kind of enjoyed it. Like Tails and Knuckles weren't really in your face. And they still have that whole dynamic between Sonic and James Marsden's character, where yeah, there's a bit of like a disconnect when he went with friend to like now he's like a father figure. I just went like,
Hmm.
where's that jump? Where that like that was my biggest criticism besides the other human characters. But otherwise, like I didn't hate it, but I did, there were it's a bit of a dip from the first movie. But in terms of like video game adaptations, I'm still wowed. So like I came into the third movie, especially with like your recommendations and accolades, like how much you loved it. So like my expectations were a little bit higher, since also I've played Sonic Shadow Generations recently. Check out my review, onemore game.ph.
Nice.
And one thing that I did enjoy with the game was the whole origin story of Shadow, because just to be honest, like I've never really played any of the Sonic games after it went full 3D, right? So when Sonic Shadow Generations came in, it's one of my assignments. Yeah, it's one of those things like I didn't like want to really get into it right away, like okay, like I have to get into the mindset of getting into the Sonic game. But then like when I started playing it and getting into Shadow story, it's like, oh, there's some darkness to this character. There's some nuance to it, right? He's an anti-hero and you can understand why he's an anti-hero. And I can see that from the movie. I think like that's one of like the best sequences in the movie where it does have some bite with his relationship with Robotnik's granddaughter. Daughter, granddaughter. And yeah, the whole friendship aspect of it, and then losing that friend, and the only thing that's keeping him from breaking, and then that's when he broke. And well, they did what's that? It's not as edgy as what the games used to portray. They didn't go all the way, but then they've adapted it and captured it enough to give new viewers a sense of like the pain Shadow went through, and I think that's like the best part of the movie. However, when we go
Here we go.
back to Sonic and his friends and the human characters, and to some degree, I'll talk about Robotnik and like Jim Carrey's character in a little bit, but then like, yeah, every time Sonic and friends show up, that's when I just kind of like tuned out. Out of all the three movies, I'd say it's like the most family genre out of the best, out of the three films. And the one thing that I'm looking at is like when I watch it in Paramount Plus, like I could pause it, I can go to the bathroom, I can come back to it, I can tune out, I guess. And I would probably say like if I'm, watching Sonic 3 on a plane or on Paramount Plus or a streaming site, I'd probably go, yeah, it's pretty good. Like I'll pretty much have the same reaction as I did with Sonic 2. However, since I'm in the theater, I'm pretty much glued to my seat. I have to watch it. Like I am one of those sticklers who like, okay, don't look at your phone. Like, just don't. You're in a film. You're here to suspend your disbelief. And I'd say now looking back, if I probably watched Sonic 2 in the theater, I'd probably have the same reaction.
Ah, okay. Interesting.
And since I kind of like foreshadowed the whole Jim Carrey thing, yeah, Jim Carrey was good. I'd say I wouldn't say peak Jim Carrey as a lot of critics are saying. I would say like Liar Liar, Ace Ventura, Jim Carrey, that latter phase like kind of came back to that, but I guess it's probably age, right? Like I did enjoy the dynamic between like the whole pop and some, but then after a while I don't know. Maybe I am getting older and it's getting a bit much. The first couple of jokes were like funny and like, okay, haha, yeah, yeah, something for the adults in the audience, something for the parents. The whole egg humor, and then suddenly yeah, it just kind of dipped as well. Not as annoying as I would say like Sonic and Friends, but and like Sonic's absolute addiction to puns, I guess. But yeah, he was getting to that point of irritation. But it yeah, yeah, I don't know. But then yeah, I did see what you were talking about, like the whole like the climactic battle, and then you could hear the Shadow theme song and everything. For those who haven't watched, sorry, like I should really spoiler warning, like my statements. But yeah, yeah, I could see where it is. Like, having Sonic Shadow Generations fresh in my head. It does have that iconic climactic battle with like, Shadow. It's like Sonic and Shadow teaming up to vanquish a foe. So yeah, like I did quite enjoy the climactic battle. But overall, I was a little bit underwhelmed. If I could give a rating, I'd say like a 3 stars, I would say it's not terrible, but like I wasn't completely wowed either. But as I said, like Shadow really took like he was the scene stealer, and I would say like Robotnik, like at the first half at least of the film, yeah, I kind of enjoyed like his presence. But yes, yeah, a bit of like Sonic 4 has been really getting pushed, and I don't really have I guess like a month has passed. Like we can talk about Amy, right?
Yeah, so just for everybody else, we need to go into spoilers now because there's been a month since the film has come out. It's technically out digitally, and pretty much not only the director, but most websites are talking about the post credits with like, the characters in there. So for those who haven't seen, go away, or if you don't care, stick around. But yeah, we're talking in depth spoilers now. So post credit scene, at least the first one that has value is like towards the end of the film, Sonic has like a race with Tails and Knuckles. He outruns them and then ends up near the state of New York, I believe. And the scene like has him in the forest in the dark, and he gets attacked by Metal Sonic, which is
Yeah.
just ridiculous. But then he seems to be getting attacked by a little like a mini army of Metal Sonics. You're just like, oh crap, what's he gonna do now? And I was like, if they weren't going to introduce her in the main film, then she was going to have to be a post credit. Amy Rose came in with a nice new design. They've clearly given her like a more like, was it heroic slash like badass kind of vibe. Her look is great. Having like translations of these characters into live action, there's always that, well, live action CGI. There always that sort of hesitation that are you going to get the design right? And obviously they've been doing well by each character with their introductions with each film because obviously seeing how like Knuckles and Tails turned out in Sonic 2, you're like, okay, they've got these guys' designs right, but what about the rest? Shadow looked wonderful, and Amy looks great too. And because this is a post credits, chances are they might refine the design because like between Tails' original appearance at the end of the post credit for Sonic 1 and then his redesign in Sonic 2, he definitely looked a heck of a lot better. And then with Shadow's tease at the end of Sonic 2, his design was actually just a remodeled version of the Sonic model. And then they actually like brought on a new version for him in Sonic 3. So they may refine her model in Sonic 4. But the point is, they've introduced two very classic characters that debuted in Sonic CD, which I'm trying to remember what year that game came out. I want to say that was
93.
93.
93.
Yeah. And it's very interesting to have both of these characters together, but it has so many like interesting ideas and implication for what this means for the future because Sonic CD has to do with time travel and you're messing around with that kind of stuff. So then with Metal Sonic being a robot version of like Sonic, I don't know why, but when I saw that original like post-credit scene, it gave me Terminator vibes. So I was wondering, are we traveling from the past into the future? Or are we going to have to go off world? Is this a story where we're going to have to go and like do some time travel stuff? Are they going to introduce silver? There's too many different factors to take into consideration right now. But obviously, they have to be careful with how many people they choose to introduce because I think each film is at least introduced one or two at max. But yeah, for the fanboy in me, I'm just like giddy because, Metal Sonic, his design was one to one with the bloody games and he looked perfect. I'm surprised they didn't actually have any remodeling for him, but I don't know, he's a robot, so I guess it doesn't matter. But with Amy, there's so many different directions they could go with her. I'm sure they're not going to go with the original design where, at least the personality where she was just like chasing after Sonic, was obsessed with him. Obviously, they've sort of course corrected that version of the character for years now, but I'm very curious to see how that's going to play out. Just so many things. Anyway, I'm waffling.
Yeah, when I played the Sonic Shadow remaster, yeah, like Metal Sonic, they just kept his classic Sega design, right? The Virtua Fighter design, I would call it, like
Yeah.
early Sega polygons, I would say. And I guess like that's the design that stuck, and fans such as yourself like love it. So like, who am I to like don't fix it when it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Like, yeah,
Yeah.
No, like he does have that look that it's quite unique, very like a alternate timeline where all future Metal Sonics would look like a classic polygon Sega design, I guess.
Yeah. That's fair. But I think just to go off of some of the stuff that you mentioned with like the Sonic franchise in terms of how it's progressed, there is this sort of interesting dynamic amongst like, people who are aware of the games and those who aren't, where certain people have responded more so to the less video game element-y aspects of it. So, for instance, like Sonic 1 is probably the tightest of the Sonic movies because it has like a familiar kind of like vibe in terms of the one CGI person and like as a real life person they go on an adventure. It's a format that's been used multiple times, and when it works, it works. It's straightforward, simple, doesn't have too many video game elements in there, and doesn't take too long, and it's mostly solid. And I've rewatched that film like a few times, and I'm surprised each time by how much I enjoy it, because even though it is like treading familiar territory in terms of its structure and story, it is something that did a lot for like Sonic, which I don't think a lot of fans really give the film credit for, because in 2019, the Sonic's like, was it series was in a bit of the crapper at the time. We were still like what, 2 years out from Mania. Forces was the last main game that we'd had, and that was atrocious. And we didn't really know what the hell was going on with Sega at the time. And the 2020, like, as it film did a lot to like add some good juice back into the fandom. And that sort of momentum carried into 2022 when the second movie came out, and then when the Sonic Frontiers came around. And there was that sort of like unification of all these different elements where Sega finally felt like them, along with Sonic Team, were actually starting to understand Sonic as a brand, but also like, no, okay, he works here in this medium, but also works here in this one. And I think with the second movie, that's where that sort of divide started to happen, because you had fans really enjoying all the elements that they thought should have been in the previous movie inserted in here. All these different elements that you got from like Sonic 1, Sonic 3, and Knuckles, and the way you was able to implement like, very heavy, deep lore for like people that have known this kind of crap for over 30 years, like myself, with the Chaos Emeralds, the Master Emeralds, introducing the Echidna tribe, Super Sonic in the bloody movie, along with the Death Egg robot, a good version of Knuckles who wasn't a trash boat since like before like the bloody 2010s. It's insane. And Tails was perfect. The only issue was with Sonic 2, it was a bit too long, and the way in which they handled some of the human stuff was a bit strange. The overuse of like licensed music was horrific, and while not as bad as the Knuckles TV show, it was still pretty bad, because I noticed in the first like 20 minutes how many songs they'd gone through. I'm like, you spent all this money on these stupid songs that you could have just put music from the games in here. What is happening? But there's so many things about that movie that could either be streamlined, removed, or like reworked. The whole wedding thing could have still worked out, and they could have integrated Gunn into that film in a way where they still came across as like an imposing threat rather than like this sort of joke of an organization. But I think what they were trying to do was, as you said, try to be like family friendly. And I think they leaned a little too heavily into that. So by the time you got to Sonic 3, I think again, they're trying to do that thing where they're trying to appeal to not only fans, but also casual audiences. So there's all these weird references, puns, and like a lot more comedic elements, because they saw what people responded to. So I think they doubled down on a few elements, especially when it came to Jim Carrey and his antics as a Robotnik. And don't get me wrong, I love me some Jim Carrey being a crazy man. I grew up on that stuff. And I would say there were moments between those two, especially in the beginning, like you said, where their jokes were vibing pretty well. And while I'm sure that it could be like a little, what's the word I'm looking for? Polarizing, but that dance sequence to Galvanize was absolutely amazing. I shouldn't like that, but it was stupidly wonderful. Whereas like the dance sequence in Sonic 2 just felt pointless and stupid. This was pointless and stupid, but for some reason, it just worked a lot better. I thought the choreography was a lot better, and I think just the dance moves were just great. And after a moment back in the summer where we got to see Deadpool dancing to NSYNC, like, was it? I thought that would be the highlight of the year. And don't get me wrong, I thought that was humorous the first time, not so much the second time. But with this, I was like, no, this is my favorite dance sequence of the year. This is crazy. But to get back on point, I think Sonic 3, the reason why I enjoyed it so much was because this was the closest we had to like, literally pulling pure video game stuff from the Sonic franchise and then actually interpreting it in real, or in the movie format. Now, I knew that there were certain things they weren't going to do. They were not going to shoot Maria. They probably wasn't going to have Dr. Gerald Robotnik turning into a madman, deciding that he was going to create the Space Colony Ark, attach a giant lizard to it, and then send it to the Earth to go and crash into it and destroy humanity. And I didn't know if he was going to be imprisoned for like how many years as well. So they did a good job with what they had to streamline that kind of stuff to make it more palatable, not only for audiences, but for children as well. But part of me thinks that there's still a certain level of edge that they probably could have implemented in there. And just with a few tweaks, I feel like the film could have been better. The conclusion had some of the most strangest whiplash I've seen in terms of like going from seriousness and comedic. Gerald is like, oh yeah, we're going to use this laser to destroy the planet. And Robotnik's like, what? So then they end up having a battle, but it's just them with their weird nanotechnology running around just like being right dumbasses. And it's just like, with some tweaks, it would have been so much better. And the way that Gerald, he gets killed with like one of like, was it the electric quills, but he gets zipped in the butt and flies into this big particle like accelerator blurry thing and gets destroyed like a bug zapper. That man died, but it's treated like a joke. And I'm like,
Yeah.
he died. What is this? So it was insane. I was baffled. So yeah, there's just moments like that where I feel like the film was afraid to tap into that darkness. And now obviously it's a balance kind of thing that you need to get correct. But I feel like with some tweaking and some maneuverability, you could have done more. Kristen Ritter was wasted in this movie, unfortunately.
Yeah.
She amounted to nothing. I feel like there could have been an interesting angle with her being like, I don't know, maybe a disillusioned member of like, Gunn, who thought that the top man was giving a little bit too much leniency to the aliens since they were there and all that. But again, very basic level stuff. The fact that they brought like, was it Natasha Rothwell and like Shamar Moore back in just to be like random like what do you call those things? Like, so Tails had like, that weird like a little device for the character to turn into the other character from the other movie that no one really liked those characters. And they were just there to infiltrate the gun area in London. But it just amounted to, oh, let me intimidate you by being like, sassy black lady. I'm just like, this is the best you have in 2024. Are you serious? It made me sad. So I'm just like, okay, I guess we're still doing that. But I mean, when the movie worked and it was like doing this game thing, again, this is just appealing to me and obviously like a load of fanboys. But when you have Sonic and Shadow fighting in like probably the most like Dragon Ball Z-esque kind of way, even like, tapping into moments from like Man of Steel and having them like fight against a bunch of robots in space while Live and Learning playing in the background, it's just peak happiness. But at the same time, there's so much more. Like them fighting a bunch of robots is all well and good, but not having like the prototype bio lizard there as like this big old thing shooting loads of lasers and all this other random crap and having to sacrifice themselves to stop the planet from being destroyed using chaos control. There wasn't even any chaos control, which is crazy. But again, there's too many things to consider in there. But I've heard from a few people and seen online that with some tweaks, I feel like the film could have even been like, it could have reached higher heights. But as it stands, it's in the right direction in terms of implementing more game stuff in there. I do feel like they have to make some tweaks to the humor, and I still feel like as a adaptation of a franchise that has like some of the best catalog of music ever, there still needs so much more work to be done to having that music implemented in there. Mario, for all its flaws with its lack of character depth and story, the music in there is impeccable, borrowing the entire library of like, is it Mario stuff right from the earliest games right until like, Mario Odyssey, which is insane. So they need to step up. They need to do better. But again, we're doing good. And, again, this is a far cry from where like I thought, this franchise was going to go when it was announced way back when, I think back in 2016, I think. So, yeah. But hey ho, that's
Yeah.
I could go on, but I don't want to chat
Oh, no
forever.
worries. Yeah. Well, like I watched this film like in January 2nd, like way past the whole Christmas season.
Yeah.
And I guess like the fans would definitely watch it in the midnight screening, I would say. previews like the night before, on the night of, on the day, like within that week, I'd say.
Yeah.
Or else, like, why would you even call yourself a fan, right? And yeah, when I got in, the theater was kind of half empty. It's families, like I was the only one adult who sat in the back, like the creeper that I am, I guess. Uh, just groaning.
Fair, fair.
But anyway, like I completely forgot there was like a dance sequence in two. Thanks for like reminding me, but like it's not in my memory at all. So like I don't even know. Like maybe I scrubbed it or wasn't really interested or I fast forwarded, I went to the bathroom. I don't know. But yeah, like I didn't mind the Robotnik dance sequence. It's just like Jim Carrey's doing Jim Carrey. He will have a dance sequence
Yeah.
at least. Or, like, classic Ace Ventura where he's just dancing by himself and everybody just watches. But like this one like had like its own like centered dance sequence. But yeah, as he said, I do agree that like with a few tweaks, he said like a little bit of a tweak. I'd say like um quite a bit more. I'd
Okay,
say.
yeah. I mean, I was downplaying it a little bit, but yeah,
Yeah.
there was some there's a fair amount of refinement because I think there is some good bones in here and a lot of really great stuff. And I think again, as someone who likes the really well choreographed action sequences in here and the depiction of super speed, which has always been a tricky thing for like, people to get like right. Because obviously there's different versions of how that stuff is done. I feel like all the stuff with Sonic and Shadow looked great, especially from the time that they had their initial little chase sequence in Tokyo to again, like, is it their fight towards the end of the movie in their super forms. And again, it's just the way that everything is like put together. The action sequences has just been going ham in terms of the detail, the choreography, how the camera starts to work around things and stuff like that. I think again, just all you need to do is tone down the humor by a little bit, or at least like create some better writing for it. Remove certain characters. Again, why the hell was Wade in this movie? And he was the guy holding the Master Emerald
Yeah.
like a hockey puck. And I'm like, ah, he was only in there for the sake of continuity and getting money. There was no reason for him to be there at all. Just
When
what a
I
load of
saw
trash.
Wade, yeah, when I saw Wade like keeping the emerald, I just remembered like your little bit of a rant and like the other month about Wade, and like I had a bit of a chuckle, and then like some kid like turned around, it's like, why are you laughing? And I'm like, well, yeah, you gotta blame Kurt for that. But then again, like like we're ragging on it a bit too much. But in terms of like I wouldn't say like Rotten Tomatoes is like the best barometer of success, but at the same time, like you see like where the critics stand. And the critics, like just by scores alone, they don't seem to like the first movie, but like they gave the current movie like glowing reviews. So I'd say like like it was a critical success in that way. But then like in terms of my personal viewership of it, I would say
Yeah.
like one, two, three in descending order. Whereas like I don't know if I want to give to another watch, but yeah, like I guess I'm not remembering to like like as I said, like I watch it in streaming, and like viewership behaviors are different when you're in a cinema and you're watching it in streaming. Like I'd say like there's a bit more retention when I watch it in the theater. So like I
Yeah, of
remember
course.
movies that I watch in theaters a lot more. Whereas like Sonic 2 has the least amount of retention that I had. But then I do remember the human actors, and a lot of them were sadly played as one-note jokes, and they continue to play as one-note jokes in Sonic 3, where there could have been a lot more given to them. And it's not like the fault of the actors; they're just given so little to work with, and like just this is the box that you play with. And sadly, like just to drive the point across, a lot of the stereotypes do come up, and you're like like I'm not really expecting that much nuance in a video game, like in a Sonic film, but at the same
Yeah.
time, like like give the actors a little bit more to play with. Like even like Riz Ahmed, like he actually had a lot to play with in Sonic 3, like he actually stood out for me as a human character more than like the rest of them, really.
Oh, Sorry,
Yeah.
I just need to go about and correct you. Even though he looks very similar, his name is actually like, is it that Lee Majub that was
Oh, yeah, sorry. Like, I'm so sorry.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, no,
yeah,
like yeah, because like it took me a while to learn how to say his name, but like the Sonic fan base love that dude.
yeah.
He's just been this one little constant in the little selection of Sonic movies that everybody really likes. The amount of fan art of that guy is crazy. I would contribute to that myself, but I only have so much time to draw these days. But yeah, he's
Hmm.
definitely like one of my favorite characters in these in this series, considering like how he was just this little lackey and just he goes on this interesting journey as like the story goes on. I'm like, what is happening? This is great.
Yeah, like he injected something more into Lima. Yeah, Lima. Sorry, so sorry.
Yeah, because I knew I was gonna get like crucified if I didn't go about and say something. So I was like, yo, let me
Yeah.
just go about and say this now.
Oh, no, no, thank you for pointing that out. Yeah. Um, yeah, I should do my research. I don't know. It
Bad
was
Vincent.
yeah, like he really stood out like as one of the human actors. I would even say like even like I guess like James Marsden's character was there to just voice out the thematic and central conflict of Sonic. Like that's his purpose. I'm just gonna, this is the central conflict. This is your thematic journey, Sonic. I will say it out loud so you can say it out loud on the third act. And I'm just like, oh, come on, like what is going on? But like I am yeah, I have to like stop myself. I'm being very hard on the film. Whereas like a lot of people have liked it and I do understand that, but like I guess the expectation for me was a little bit higher than most, like I guess at the same time like Sonic, I mean Sega sees this as, like as a victim of success, I guess, like then they're being really careful and really conservative with how they present stuff. Like we have to continue the success. And I'd say for more like for myself, like to be honest, I really didn't know what I was looking for, but I guess like I was like just playing off your energy, seeing like how much like you liked it. And then like for me myself, like I'm not hitting that dopamine like kick. Whereas
That's
like
fair.
yeah, whereas like I'd compare it to like, a friend of mine who really enjoyed the second season of Arcane, but then like he's a big League of Legends fan, so he sees all the nuances to it. So I guess like I'm at that bordering casual viewer, like I've had some experience watching and playing Sonic when I was younger, but like it's not like a forefront of my life. I'm not like a super fan or even a fan altogether. And like that's why I probably gravitated more to the first one since like like the expectation for me to go with brand recognition. Like I would say like this is Sonic and like cool. Like and then you have the James Marsden character, which like you can try to appeal to uh, viewers who haven't really watched the show. So yeah,
Yeah.
my criticisms with the movie is similar to like my criticisms with Arcane, where like as an outsider looking in, or even as a visitor, I don't want to use that type of language. I'd say a visitor coming in. I'd say there are some like yeah inside jokes and in game like fan references that like I'm not familiar with, and the ones that I would say like where we all stand on equal ground, like the human actors, where they probably don't like besides Maria and Robotnik, of course, that don't exist in game. Yeah, that's like the yeah like so you created new characters. Why not add a little bit more effort to make them lovable and rememberable? Kind of like I'd say Daryl in The Walking Dead. He wasn't in the comics and but then he really stood out. They created a new character and made him stand out. Like treat him like Daryl and maybe, like the lackey character, right?
Yeah. No,
Agent
that's fair.
Spoon. Yeah. Like Agent
Because
Spoon, like yeah. He stood
yeah,
out.
every so often, like, you'll have one of those sort of things where you'll introduce a new thing into that fandom that didn't exist before, and then it'll become a staple of it. goodness knows, Sonic could eventually introduce something that could have potentially, unlikely but intentionally, like, is a Harley Quinn kind of like vibe where, she gets introduced to the animated series and now has become a staple of the, DC universe, even though she wasn't even born from the comics. So there is a chance that, it's happened with certain adaptations here and there. Whether Sonic will be able to pull that kind of thing off, considering the market that they're trying to aim for at the moment, which is still family and like heavily based on, kids as well. They're still trying to get that balance. And I think they're working at it. I think it just takes a little bit more. Whether they'll actually do it, mm, it's too hard to say at the moment. But again, there is at least some sort of upwards momentum right now. So we'll see.
Hmm. Yeah, hopefully like once the fourth movie comes out, they get the balance pretty much right. And I'd even like, say right now it's at an 80% family genre and 20%, yeah, like that 20% for the rest of the audiences who are not like who doesn't fall into the Venn diagram of Sonic fans and are into their kids as crap, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So parents, I guess. Maybe
yeah.
I'm at that age. I'm in the parent demographic
Oh
now.
God, that'd be interesting.
Uh, you wanted to speak about some potential stuff about Secret Level, right?
Yes, yes. So, in regards to Secret Level, if you watched our previous episode or listened to the previous episode, you will be aware that I believe we both had like sort of similar thoughts about Secret Level, where there were only a handful of episodes of the 15. Was it 15? That was the overall
Yeah.
number. So of the 15 episodes that existed, there was only like a handful that we'd actually consider to be like good or at least decent, worth watching kind of episodes because too many of the episodes felt like you either had to be a little bit more locked into the franchise or they, stopped before they got started. Only a handful of them actually told like a fully complete story, and I'd say only one episode did that, and that was the New World one. And there was it the Outer Worlds, which is the weird one with the dude who was doing the experiments on himself?
Yeah, yeah, where he joined an experiment to chase after his friend. Um, I don't know. I don't know what his real intentions were. It's like
Yeah.
total beta behavior.
But yeah, like I ended up watching like the rest of the episodes after we recorded the previous episode, and I was just like, by the time I got to that PlayStation episode at the end, oh my God, that was horrific.
It was the weakest out of all, I would say.
I
The PlayStation episode.
yeah, but oh man, I just felt like so deflated by the end. I'm like, that's what you're ending this on?
Yeah,
That's
right?
oh, horrible. But yeah, no, just with Secret Level, I think as a concept, there is a lot of potential. Again, having an anthology where you get to spend a little bit of time in various different franchises just to get a feel for what that world is, how it operates, learn about some characters, maybe have like a small snippet of a plot here and there, or maybe just a consolidation of like, as a story that's in that game. So you just get a feel for it because at the end of the day you could really just think of this as just like secret man marketing tool to get you to buy their games. But I feel like with the right kind of story and direction and compelling characters, you can tell a pretty good story within like is it 5 to 10 minutes or maybe even longer. I just feel like more time needs to be put into not only the right choices of franchises, but also just more concentration on like making just something that has a start, middle, and end. For the love of man, just there were so many things that started and never even got off the ground. I'm looking at you, Mega Man. I'm still salty about that. Good gravy. And even the Concord episode, which genuinely like had me more intrigued than the bloody game did when it had that first reveal. I feel like that did a slightly better job of like trying to get me in on that universe. It was
Mhm.
interesting how that thing ended was pretty much like the start of like the first trailer, I think, the CG
Yeah.
trailer. But even then, more work needs to be done, man. And so I think with Secret Level next time around, I feel like there's still a chance that they could, do a thing where they have a nice mixture of like different gaming franchises from very different points. But I feel maybe they need to go a little bit more. I wouldn't say mainstream, but pick games that are a little bit more aware with the general public because the Pac-Man episode was interesting, but definitely wasn't Pac-Man in the way that I think a lot of people who are familiar with Pac-Man would, pick
Hmm.
it. And I am aware of Spelunky, but I've never played. And while seeing, actually, no, tell a lie. I played the first Spelunky when it was on like a game trial on Switch, and it just wasn't for me. But
Hmm.
it was just, again, I think like, some more interesting choices with certain franchises that people are aware of might do some good. But yeah, there's so many different things you could pick in there. So I don't know if you've thought about this, Vincent, but I have a few in my head of like maybe potential candidates. But I'm just curious, are there any like franchises you think would work for Secret Level Season 2?
Well, one thing that I'm like reading from, like what's going around in the internet, like there was this report going around that they pitched Halo and Doom secret level crossover,
Oh, yes, I
brought
read
down
about
by
that. Yeah.
Microsoft, and like, I don't know, like it just felt like there was potential there, right? Like, what's that? One of my favorite episodes was the Unreal Tournament episode.
Yeah.
Where it's like it's like they really did a good job trying to like push for like the shooters especially like it's very cinematic. Even Crossfire X, like I didn't mind Crossfire X to be honest with you. It had like like it had like that whole tight bottle episode where it's that mission and the whole what's that, the whole element of changing sides and just fulfilling the mission and not getting too like attached. Like I like the themes around it.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like I really wanted to see like what they did with crossing over to different IPs, not the PlayStation one, of course.
Oh
But
gosh, yeah.
yeah, with this one, like like it really could have worked. Like you have two warriors, space warriors, like one man army, as you would call it, having their own experience and like their field of expertise, crossing over and seeing how that does. You could probably have like potentially, I would say like with how what we've seen so far, it'll probably kind of look like the Warhammer episode where it's like, oh, it's really cool, like if you don't have any context with the whole Warhammer 40K universe. Whereas like some with some players who have played Space Marine 2, they'd have some context in what's going on, some backstory with some of the characters. But for somebody else who's like fresh into it, they'd enjoy the visuals and they'd enjoy the lore and possibly look into at least Space Marine 2, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not the whole like yeah, like I don't know if I'm ready for the figurines this point in my life. But yeah, like seeing like crossover episodes, like that's a really good idea. Or even just like a Halo and a Doom episode by itself. Like the Doom Slayer, like it's been around since like the 90s and it has gone through different iterations over the years, and now like you have this new love for this boomer shooter type. Halo, well, like I would say I don't know how much has survived after Halo Reach with 343's way of dealing with the franchise. And of course, do we need to talk about the Paramount Plus show? But
Uh,
personally, like when I played the single player story mode for the new Halo, like I actually didn't mind it. It actually was pretty good. Like it's just like the way they handled the live service aspect of it was questionable, but in terms of the lore, I would say like I had to read up on Halo 4 and 5 to see what went on and how what's that, how they like why Cortana was behaving the way she was, like a little bit more
yeah.
human, a little less the Cortana that everybody else grew up with, I guess. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, like I'd say like the last big Halo game I played before that was Reach, and it was really well done. Or even like a Reach episode, like a Halo Reach episode would be cool because like it has that whole last stand team aspect of it. which is like a pretty prevalent theme. Watching a lot of the secret level episodes, they really like doing the whole either an origin story where everybody gets together, kind of like in Concord, or like a final battle with realizations and like something profound. And I think like Halo Reach would really do that. Yeah, I like to see like what they do with Doom too. Hopefully not like Mega Man, but yeah,
Oh
'cause, like
God.
they do love the whole origin, half an origin story, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, no, those are some interesting picks, and I think that crossover idea was interesting because not only would that really be a cool crossover with those characters and those worlds, but the idea of there being additional crossovers for other like game IPs would be an interesting little niche that you could carve out within that space because again, it's not like you'd be doing it for like a full on season of TV or a movie. It would be within like is it how many minutes of like a anthology show. So while obviously there's probably budgetary and all sorts of paperwork that would need to be sorted out in order to facilitate these sort of crossovers, it would be way more feasible and way more interesting to have like just a short clip, well clip or like a how many minutes anywhere between I'd say at least minimum 10 to 20 of like whatever sort of crossover you'd be doing. But because there's so many franchises out there, you could possibly go into certain franchises that were competing against each other. Or I had an idea for like what if there was something about like mascot characters from the 90s or something. Now, while I don't know if Sega would be, willing to put Sonic in there, I think that would be way more feasible than getting Mario in there. But I think, it'd be interesting to do something about Crash or Spyro, considering
Yeah.
how much like love people have for those characters and how they've basically been fallen to the wayside because after Crash 4 didn't sell as much as they wanted, he's been on ice and we thought Spyro was coming back with a reignited trilogy, but that's been pretty much just dead to the world for a bit. I think it'd be interesting just to go into that period where, towards the 90s after Mario and Sonic came out, you could, tap into that period where there was just a bunch of like, 2D and 3D platformers where they just had random mascots that were just trying to ape off of that sort of like animal mascot thing. You could tap into Croc, maybe even like, go into weird territory with bloody Bubsy and stuff. I think that would make for some interesting material. If it wasn't just for like, singular episode, maybe it'll just like one about mascots in general. I was even just thinking about like this would be a little too obscure, but if they did something on Cool Spot, that would be really funny. Just because, like, that character I've always found just fascinating and strange. He's just like, just the dude with glasses with just a circle with limbs. And I remember playing that on, like, my Sega Mega Drive way back when. I thought that would be, like, just pretty fun. But I don't know if they would be able to get this to work either, because again, when you're messing around with bigger franchises, especially when they have like certain studios or like certain game creators attached to them, they're less willing to play ball unless they obviously saw like some sort of return on investment or something like that. So, keeping something like a Metal Gear in there would be like probably insane to try and put that into like something like secret level. But I don't know. I feel like there's a number of PlayStation franchises where they could probably do some stuff with that. If you're talking more along the lines of, the PlayStation or PS2 era, I'd like to see something done with like, I don't know, maybe Dino Crisis or Ape Escape. I think that would be pretty cool. Or maybe they could do something with Parappa the Rapper and have him have his own dedicated episode. I think that would be pretty random, but also cool. Because again, you could do some unique things with the visuals and maybe mess around with like, the format. So I don't know, man. Bring back bloody SSX, man. That would be pretty fun. Maybe even a Celeste episode, I think would be cool because Celeste is probably one of the most, at least from what I've seen, one of the most celebrated, like, little indie games, especially when it comes to platformers that showed up in the last, like, 10 years. So having a dedicated episode on that, considering like, the themes and what the character goes through in there would make for an interesting episode.
Yeah, so yeah, from what been seeing, like from what they've released, like a lot of them, work has been done where, like for example, like Concord, they released the series to promote the live service that would have gone out in September. But
Mm.
at the same time, like especially in the second half of the show, like you have that that Evolve one, like the space like it hasn't even released yet. It hasn't even like it's just was announced at the Game Awards, like that whole
Mm.
that whole father and daughter story, right? Uh
Oh yeah.
yeah. Yeah, but like you spoke about Celeste and like so the second the sequel has been canceled, which kind of sucks. But
Yeah, absolutely.
I would say like that's a good opportunity for the studio to like, pitch to kind of like do something along the lines of what they did with the Spelunky series and maybe get some more interest in the show, right? There was even talks of trying to get like Half-Life 3 to get Gabe into to continue
Oh
the
my
series.
God.
But yeah, I guess like Steam's just gonna go no. Like Valve's gonna say no.
Yeah, that sounds
But
about
yeah,
right.
that's a way you know to do it, I guess. Like if some creator would have that type of I don't know, like passion for like a project they want to get going, kind of like Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver, right? Everybody wants to see like a sequel to come out.
Yeah.
And then like you get Eidos or to come up with it again, right? Like to get people interested in the game again since the remaster came out last month. You already have that momentum going. I think it's like a good potential for that platform would be in a way to revive certain series who are stuck in development hell to get more people behind it, more people to wish list the game, more people to like do online engagement and talk about it. Nudged Ubisoft to get Beyond Good or Evil 2 to come out soon because they've been at that for a while. It's
Man, that thing doesn't
longer
even
than
exist
Duke
anymore.
Nukem 3D. Like they've Duke Nukem forever, I guess, at this point.
Man.
But yeah, like that's a good way to like push for it because like right now, like I'm seeing it as to build some goodwill for games that haven't come out, get some eyeballs on that, the whole Shadow Labyrinth thing, the whole subvert the mascot, the Pac-Man mascot. And then, suddenly you get a Game Awards ad, a trailer, and you're like, I think I just watched that. Huh,
Yeah.
it's pretty cool. And at the same time, you're like, huh, Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
No, absolutely.
yeah, and then you
Yeah.
have the Mega Mans and you have the Sifu that just came out, and they're great worlds to explore. So yeah, Secret Level, like a lot of potential, but then kind of like how we talked about with the Sonic show, needs a little bit more tweaks.
Yeah.
Really like, for it to come out to be like its best iteration.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think again, just like a greater focus on like having the right kind of franchises be adapted, but also coming up with like just good stories, something that feels like, is it fleshed out. Now, there's not a rule that says that you can't have a story that like ends on an interesting cliffhanger, but you have to make everything that comes before that worth watching. And I feel like I was just teased a little too much in Secret Level, and I'm like, no, you can't do that. You need to earn that, sir. So I'm hoping with the next season that they will at least like see what certain fans were saying because I don't know how much noise this made because within like certain gaming circles or certain gaming sites I saw like a certain amount of like discussion surrounding it, but I'm hoping that like that they were able to at least see some of like what people were saying and will hopefully make some corrections, but we'll see.
So in other like game adaptations, yeah, I wasn't able to catch it, but Netflix just dropped Castlevania season 2 Nocturne. I was kind of partial with the previous one, like season one. Like I didn't love it, I didn't hate it, but yeah, it was like good entertainment for the time. And as I said, like the original Castlevania was good. Like I did enjoy the first season, and then like second and third could have been combined, and then the final season kind of like took it home. So when they kind of like teased the whole Nocturne, I was like, oh my God, like we're gonna be seeing Symphony of the Night. Whereas like the more I think about it, the more I'm going like, how much story was there in Symphony of the Night? Or am I like filling in all the side like dialogues in between, like fighting endless swarms. It was literally like the Dark Souls of our time when we were playing it back in like PlayStation 1. It was greatly difficult. And the more you level up, like it got easier, but it never really like got easy. Like, like you just kind of adapted with how, the difficulty of the game went. And I guess, that's how like we adapt to difficult games, right? Sadly, like my Netflix account was is not there anymore. So yeah, I was just wondering, like, have you seen this season two? And
Yeah, so just some context before we continue. Like, yeah. So with Castlevania the original, I loved the first season because I was surprised with the direction that they decided to choose because obviously with Castlevania, if you're aware of like the lineage of the games, with the way that they were released, you had the focus on Simon Belmont in the original, and they chose to go with Trevor in the show because that was based on Castlevania 3, which is a prequel. So it was interesting how they decided to focus on like the characters of that third game, which was the prequel, but also decided to take certain elements from like, certain later games and flesh out like characters like Dracula and Alucard. And I was like, ooh, okay, this is pretty cool. It was just the way that it was written with Warren Ellis's like input. I believe that was him. That was one of the head writers on that show at the time. It was just again like one of my favorite things is where you take a game where there is a certain amount of story, not only within the game manual, but also certain things you can see within the game itself. But you expand upon it, but still keep those bones intact. And what I loved is how you got like Trevor, Cypher, and Alucard together to battle Dracula and have all this extra stuff going on, which felt meaningful, but again, still in line with what you saw from the games. Now, obviously, there was a number of people that's never played the game, so they probably don't care about all this extra context. But one of my favorite things about adaptations in general is how you are taking that game material, translating it into another medium, still making it like, is it exactly what came before, but giving greater context, fleshing things out, making it deeper, and having like, cool and interesting characters with cool plots. What they did with Dracula and his relationship, like in the beginning of the show, was great. So when he decided, you know what, screw it, I'm just gonna go after humanity for like, is it basically killing the only woman that gave me any like, light in this world? That was great. And I think for me, seasons 1 and 2 of that show were great. Now, season 1 almost felt like a backdoor pilot to the whole show because it was so short. But like, I feel like season 1 and 2 have like a mostly complete story. After that, with season 3 and 4, you have a bunch of other additional characters and certain people that were left over from the previous show who have to come into play with the latter half of the show. And for me, while there were certainly interesting moments here and there, and like you said, I think with season 4, things finally like, came together. I think there were certain heights that I saw, especially within season 2, with the assault on Dracula's castle and some of the action sequences. And I love Castlevania does this very well. It makes use of its video game music in the most hype way within like some of the action sequences. And again, as someone who has barely touched any Castlevania games, I'm ultimately aware of the music through certain Let's Plays and a lot of watching the Angry Video Game Nerd, not gonna lie as well. But hearing them actually make use of this music in, such a climactic and epic way, I'm like, this is how you do it. This is pitch perfect. So moving on to Nocturne, I remember when that came out and I was watching it and I was like, okay, I'm enjoying the fact that we're going into Rondo of Blood like territory now, that we have a different setting with different characters, and there's a bunch of extra stuff in here which I don't think was in the games. Again, this is like the area where I'm like less familiar with like Castlevania lore and all that, but with Annette and certain other characters here and now, I'm like, I'm pretty sure this isn't in the game. But for what it was, I'm like, this is interesting. I just didn't find myself as compelled to watch as before. I feel like the pacing was a little slower, and there were certain elements in there where I'm just like, this is cool, but I'm not as in love. But by the time the show was over, that conclusion with the tease of, well, the second season is out now, so you know that Alucard is in there. But the fact that Alucard showed up and he was looking all pretty like he did in Symphony of the Night, I was like, oh, so I fanboyed a little bit. I was like, they brought back the beautiful boy from like the previous show, but he's also looking so Symphony of the Night right now. So I was I was intrigued by like the second season of Nocturne, but I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't like super hyped on it. But having, basically binged the show last night for this podcast, I am not gonna lie, I genuinely like season two a lot more than season one. I
Mhm.
feel like there's just a lot more momentum to this season. Once you have all of the foundations out of the way with understanding who the main characters were in the previous show, their struggles, and getting to know what's going on, this season's all about organizing, planning, getting some of these, like, is it chess pieces in play for, some of these more climactic stuff. So certain characters go in very interesting directions. So there is more interesting character progressions, some interesting twists and turns with certain people, certain divides, certain, like, is it alliances, certain connections are, built. The animation is so good. I have been partially critical of I think it's Powerhouse Animation, who are the people that animate this show. I feel like the animation in Castlevania can fluctuate between looking really, really good, especially during the action sequences. But then there's certain other times where the I feel like the art can be a tad inconsistent at times, and certain animation sequences that are supposed to have a certain level of fluidity and movement, there's not enough frames of animation in between, so it does look a little slow and awkward. And that can happen from time to time in this season. But again, I feel like these guys went in on the action sequences. Again, to not go into anything specific, but there are action things all over the place that are fantastic, where characters are making use of their weapons, abilities, and doing all sorts of cool single take shots, or like those sort of tracking shots where you go from one person to another and there's all sorts of things happening. It's violent, it's well choreographed, and everybody has their moment to shine and do super kick-ass things. It's wonderful. And for me, Richter was a character that I was so about until like the latter half of season one. And I feel like he definitely gets fleshed out a little better in this one. Maria, the little girl who can summon, like, is it little animal creatures and stuff? She has some interesting stuff in this season. I quite enjoy what happened with her. And even Alucard, he does some interesting things with his character, with diving into certain things that we haven't seen in the previous season. And just in terms of some of the other characters, Annette, she has, again, some interesting things going on with her abilities and like the ties to her like African heritage. And there's some interesting stuff going on with the Abbot, with Terra and Orlox, who is just this cool, sneaky dude who has just been operating from the shadows and doing all sorts of interesting things. And again, there's other things I could mention without going into the area of spoilers, but it's kind of tricky. But safe to say, I think that this season was definitely improvement on the previous one. I feel like it understood its assignment a lot more, and we established all this stuff in season one. Now let's just go. And there's just all these cool and interesting things that happen. Again, there were certain moments here and there where I feel like certain things could have been tightened up here and there. And towards the end, there were a couple decisions where I'm just like, I'm not sure I would have gone that way myself, but it still feels like a fitting conclusion to this show. So yeah.
Okay. So like kind of like in the original Castlevania, it's still more of an ensemble rather than a single focused because basically like what's that? Richter was the protagonist of Rondo of Blood, but
Yeah.
then like watching Nocturne, like I really felt that he took like a really deep back seat for most of the show. In favor of Annette and like all the other characters. Like I really felt like Annette was the main character of Nocturne for the most of it. Yeah, and like the whole French Revolution thing that's going on, and even all the side like the thing that I enjoyed about the original Castlevania was like even in the vampire side, there's bits of infighting. They're not completely unified as especially when like Dracula took a back seat, right? And then let
Yeah.
all his armies have their own like agency. They're all basically fighting different fights and not
Yeah,
really
no, of course.
going for like the main thing. They're not unified by a leader, which I think like was the strength and the weakness of seasons two and three with all like the infighting and all the side politics, kind of like I would say like it's such a staple of Netflix, like Netflix's adaptations. I would say the same thing like Voltron, like going back to Voltron, like the first two seasons where like the Lion Force like had a clear enemy, and then once once that takes a back seat and you get the Prince guy. Like it's 5 seasons of like, so what's going on? Are you a good guy? Are you a bad guy? Like, where do we stand with you? It's so
Yeah.
nuanced in the worst possible way, I would say. And then suddenly, like, yeah, let's bring back the big bad and go from there, you know. Yeah, whereas like in season 4, like there is like a final big bad, I would say, like to go against and bring it all home. Yeah, I do enjoy like I guess everybody wants to be Game of Thrones in a certain type of way.
Yeah.
And then meander from there, I guess. And then suddenly like, oh, we all have to gather together to fight the the White Walkers, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, since I've only seen the first season, and yeah, you do kind of like have like a microcosm of that, like the whole episode, like you have Richter's Tale of Revenge, which kind of, like at the very end of it all, like I'm not like I have to like jog my memory a bit regarding like how it all panned out. Yeah, like it kind of like gets it kind of takes it home in the end, but then there's a lot of meandering in the middle, which
Yeah.
which is great because you kept it to one season rather than like a whole series. And was there in season 2, was it kind of the same way, or did it transition to Symphony of the Night, where you could say that like since Alucard was the protagonist of the first of that game, like did he take the reins a bit, or is it more distributed evenly between all the characters?
So to answer that question, I would say it still feels like it's an ensemble where again we're building off of the momentum of the previous season. So all of like those little foundational pieces that were done with Richter, Maria, and Annette. And is it his grandfather, like is it Juiced or however you say his name? Like who Richter's grandfather, who's played by like Ian Glenn from Game of Thrones.
Hmm.
Um Now, I will admit, I did not rewatch season one before watching season two, and that was just because season one doesn't have that sort of same level of compelling nature that makes me want to go back to it. Sort of like how I wanted to go back to seasons one and two of like, Castlevania.
Yeah.
With Nocturne, it's like a little different because I know that there's all these little moments in between where I'm like not having as much fun, where I'm more interested in what's happening here with this character as opposed to this one here. But with this season, again, I feel like what they've done is given everybody their sort of individual moments to shine, but there's also moments where there's a lot of crossover where characters are interacting, helping, fighting alongside each other, dealing with each other's problems, learning things about each other, all that kind of stuff. So while there are moments where, Richter will be the focus or Alucard will have his moment to be the focus, or you'll even have like moments where the villains of the show will have their moments to lap up the screen time. They try to distribute as well as they can so everybody has like, a through line from like start to finish.
Hmm. All right, something to look forward to, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I don't want to oversell this too much because, like, I'm not saying this is like, is it, oh my God, like, is that a cream my pants kind of TV? But I will say that for the way I felt finishing, like, the first season, where I felt like, I was intrigued in the beginning. There was some stuff in the middle, but not so hyped. And then by the end, I was like, okay, cool. I'm looking forward to season two. With season two, I feel like it was a little bit more consistent in terms of like having that momentum from like start to end. There is again towards like maybe three-quarters of the way in towards the end where there's maybe a little bit of a dip. And there's one moment with like a certain character where something's happening for a while and it's like, yo, get your act together, get this sorted, speed it up. But there's at least like a couple episodes where I was having the best time ever. I'm like, this is hype. This is so good. And again, they do a few things with the music where I'm just like, yes, I'm having a good ass time. So yeah, man, I would definitely recommend this. I think if you again, I think it depends on like how much you're willing to invest in these characters. Because if you want Solar number four, I feel like there's enough done here where it's still worth watching. And again, I feel like they've made some improvements, especially when it comes to the pacing. A little bit more of the severity of the situation becomes like a little bit more apparent. And certain characters go in directions where I'm just like, oh, okay, that's actually pretty cool. But then at the same time, going back to sees, the previous like Castlevania show, if you're looking for that, I'm not sure you're going to find that here specifically. But
Hmm.
again, I had a good time with it. I would say it's definitely worth watching. And again, it's only 8 episodes, with episodes, sort of fluctuating between like 25 to like 30-ish minutes if you're taking, the credits out of the equation. So yeah, it's all right.
All right. Awesome. So we're moving into February, right? Like Last of Us
Hooray.
2 Last of Us season 2, Last of Us 2, technically it is Last of Us 2. It's gonna be in April. Yeah, it's gonna be soon. And yeah, like any games you're thinking of playing through like this crazy gaming season next month?
Good gravy. I mean, I've got a backlog that just needs to be carved out a little bit. I'm definitely in my phase now where I like to just play games that I can just play for at least a half hour to an hour and then dip out. So any sort of random, sort of online game where I could just have a few bits of fun and run away. So I haven't gone back to Warframe for a bit, but I might go back to that just for a little bit. Been playing some F-Zero 99. That's fun. And I've gone back into playing Skyrim again because I started that game, I want to say around Christmas of 2023, was having a lot of fun once I started back on it in late December slash early January. I'm still fairly early on in the game. I've only just like spoke to the Greybeards and just exploring random areas in the north and going to random little dungeons where I don't know how you describe them, but they look like little pillars where you open the doors and then go down this little spiral staircase, and they're just random enemies in there. I got attacked by these weird, like little mechanical spiders and got killed within like 5 hits. And I'm like, well, I'm not going back there again. Screw that. Um, but yeah, no, I'm enjoying my time as like, a little wood elf. My archery skills are good and I like to sneak and I like to shock things with like lightning magic. So that's cool.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I do want to play Okami finally. I finally bit the bullet and bought that on Switch. And I want to go through that and play a few other games. I might finally start the Bayonetta series because like that's been on my list for years. I own all three games, I just never played them yet. But I'm also debating whether I want to get me a Steam Deck because I really, really want one. Because then I can finally play my bloody Steam library and not on my potato computer that can't run anything. But yeah, that's where I'm at with my gaming stuff right now. How about you?
Yeah, speaking of Steam Deck, that's yeah, like I am getting my gaming reviews assignments for next month. Can't speak much of a lot of them. We have our NDAs and everything. But yeah,
Standard.
like one thing that I'm looking forward to is Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. I've played the first one, like yeah, like if you're thinking it's kind of like Skyrim, no, like it's Skyrim on like hard mode all the time. Like
Oh
like
no.
just some context, like you play as this peasant named Henry, and you basically go up, the social ladder in medieval Bohemia, and like as you can see, like peasants don't get a lot of leeway. Like do you get the training that you need to like go out and like destroy everything with like your dragon screams? No, you get none of that. Like, but at least like in the second, like the great part is like I did a preview where you don't really need to play the first one. You don't have to put yourself through that punishment. You can
Mm.
like skip ahead and like spoiler alert, like he got like his lot in life got a little bit better. Like he has a patron that looks after for him now. Like he's a bodyguard. He's improved his physical stats to become like a good fighter, at least, like a melee fighter. It's not a knight per se, because peasants like don't have that degree of influence, but you do. Like, like the big selling moment of like Kingdom Come really is what a story of someone who grew up in that era, like how much he can influence. Like he is part of the wheel that runs the whole world. Like he doesn't have the influence that like say someone of Elon Musk's influence can get like these days, right? Like you're not a mover, you're not a shaker. you're just another individual with your own story, but it could be an interesting story, whether or not like you go about with your adventures. And that's the great part about it, right? But if you still want to go around destroying everything in your path, there is Avowed. I don't know if I'm gonna get assigned that one, but it's from
Yeah.
the makers of it's from Obsidian Entertainment. And yeah, like it's pretty cool that we're gonna see. We've seen a lot of futuristic titles from them, but this is a good way to see like how they do like a medieval, like an RPG, like a sword and sorcery type of game. Maybe I'll be assigned Civilization 7, see like where strategy tactics will take me.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So like, yeah, it's pretty cool, pretty interesting month. Staying away from Monster Hunter Wilds because I got no time for that. Yeah, like yeah, and if you're into Yakuza, like or like a dragon as they've redefined themselves, yeah, you'll get some pirates, like some pirate action going, right? Like I guess even a better naval action scenes than Skull and Bones, I guess. Ooh, did I say that out loud? Yeah, I said that.
Oh,
I said what I said.
I don't want to think about it. It hurts. I mean, it doesn't even hurt. It's just like the fact that that whole Skull and Bones is just like this weird entity that I remember the E3 it was announced and I was in Canada at the time. And then just the amount of times you kept hearing Skull and Bones is like, still coming out, but it's been redesigned behind the scenes. It's still going to show up. And then it came out and it was just this like big nothing. Oh, why?
Yeah. Well, as they said, you do a genre good. Like you do a genre good, like it's just a lot of developers are just no, a lot of publishers are just blinded by the whole mobile game money, right? So if live service can get you that mobile game money, then let's go for that. But then at the same time, like just with anything else in life, you build it well, like you're gonna get a lot of backing because people want to play good games. People want to play like good games that they can get behind on with stories that resonate with them. But like either you get a game with somebody's agenda, or whether it's the agenda is political or the agenda is the publisher just wants a little bit more money to show their stakeholders. A lot of gamers are tired of it. They're tired of playing to somebody's agenda. They just want to play a good game, and like life's hard enough as it is. And then like, oh, like we have to like study on this type of thing. We just want to sit down and like look at Marvel Rivals, right? Like they did such a good job of getting everybody together to like just build a good game and play as the Marvel characters that they know and love, something that like Avengers, like I don't know, like Avengers had that like opportunity but didn't go with it. They didn't reach that potential, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like yeah, like you got a good hero shooter, and now yeah, now basically like they're releasing like new heroes one after the other. Like they're teasing the X-Men slate of heroes already, right? Like how long did it take for Avengers to come out with like Black Panther, right? Like
Oh
almost like a
gosh.
good 8 months after. Like I just for a AAA studio to fumble like that on like all like on a home run concept, I don't know. I don't really know. But I guess that's a conversation for another time.
Yeah, I mean, there is a whole, well, there have been dissertations made about like, was it the oddity that is Marvel's Avengers that came out like, I think that was back in 2020, I want to say.
Yeah, 2020.
Um, but yeah, gosh. Mm.
Suicide Squad last year too, like
Oh boy. Oh man, and just the ending cutscene for that was absurd. But you could tell that it was just like there's nothing left. Let's just like scribble something on the wall, call it a day. I mean,
Yeah.
especially with like those weird like little moving pictures that they had for cutscenes in quotation marks, I guess.
Yeah, we're
Ugh.
still reeling heavily from Anthem, I guess, like a lot of this is like yeah, Anthem was an early adopter, but everybody else seemed to jump on board like late into the game, right? Like every time someone
Mm.
sniffs out free money. But then again, like, like I'm not, trying to get behind like some of the decisions made by leadership, but at the same time, like it is expensive to build a game these days. Couple billion. Like, yeah, it does make a lot of money, but as I said, like if you build something that has like a good backing, like people will come back for it, Like why do people come back for Final Fantasy 14? Why do people come back for Fortnite? Why do people come back for Team Fortress 2 after all these years? Because like they build a good game and then a community rallied around it. And like Destiny to a certain degree until whatever they did last year. Yeah, like they had a community that really worked well. But then, like you just gotta respect the people that give you money to do your stuff. But then like, you start disrespecting them or start like rug pulling them. Like we're all human, like we play these games because like we like them and we attach to them. But the thing is like the one thing why like I live service just doesn't gravitate to me. It's like it's work. It just feels like work, like even MMOs, like you go to your second job where you really don't get paid, and then you just keep like you get rewarded like a dopamine hit every time like you kill something, but even then, like a bunch of like there's a resurgence for World of Warcraft. Like everybody's loving the new World of Warcraft like patch. So yeah, like it's not all, like doom and gloom. It's just a lot of terrible decisions have been made and gamers are just reacting.
Yeah. And I feel like hopefully there is like a swing in the right direction in terms of like, development choices of franchises that get made and, decision making. But again, we know when it comes to like, AAA developers and some of these bigger people that, you know, obviously it's a business at the end of the day, so money does need to be made. But the fact of the
Yeah.
matter is, I'm hoping that there's going to be at least some smart decisions because hearing some of the stories about some of the budgets for some of these games that's been coming out in the last few years is absurd. That you're spending like, is it hundreds of millions and still trying to get a return on investment and is investing all this time and effort on like, the latest like you know, graphics and trying to reach that upper echelon of like visual fidelity while also creating like good gameplay. But the problem is without proper worked out management and time, you come up with so many games that have like crappy launches that require like 50,000 patches just to try and make it work the way it should have, like when it came out 6 months to a year ago. And you keep hearing all these stories where it's just like, do you need to spend that much money for this? There are other games that are coming out with a fraction of your budget and they're doing like, a better job of like not only retaining people, but also having like, I don't know, better word of mouth. Now, obviously, it's a different thing for different genres, different things for different studios, but I'm hoping that there's at least some consciousness going on about like, as to how things are being managed because, we can only ascend so far into this upper echelon of like, is it potential perfection that, developers and certain gamers think that we require before we just reach that ceiling, which I think in some ways we're already there. But
Yeah. But yeah, just the same way as let's say like a cinematic universe. I am in the camp that like believes that Marvel had a fluke on their hands. It's like it's an anomaly. I wouldn't say like it's a standard. It's not sustainable. It got in the way, like everything was just working. It just worked out for Marvel in a way, and then they pushed it, and like the Avengers thing came out, and as proven by Marvel themselves that like replicating that lightning in the bottle like they have to start from scratch again, to be honest with you, like and you can see DC tried to play catch up and um yeah, failed like spectacularly. And like I don't know what James Gunn has in store for it. Like for me, like I'm on a wait and see type of thing.
yeah,
Yeah. And same thing with like live service, like you had even Final Fantasy 14, they had like a dud before they did Realm Reborn. And even before that, right? Like what's that? Not everything can be Fortnite. Not everything can be Team Fortress 2. Like even Overwatch, like they tried chasing after the same lightning in a bottle, and then they just like made Overwatch 2, which is basically Overwatch 1 and a new like it's Malibu Stacy with a hat, right? But like the audiences didn't buy it, right?
Yeah. Gosh.
Yeah,
And
it's just
I
yeah, like they try to figure things out, but at the same time, like if you're just chasing after if you're chasing after profits and not what it's meant to do, the people you're selling to will sniff it out and go like, why am I trying to, why are you selling me this? This is what I want. Same thing with like everyone else. Like, yeah, I just think that a lot of consumers are just tired playing to an agenda, whether it is like a political ideology or whether it is trying to, trying to tell people this is what they want, but it's not really what they want.
yeah. No, absolutely. The joys of being a gamer in modern times.
What happened
Joyful.
to just hopping in a cartridge and booting the game without updating it for at least like 2 to 3 hours before finally playing the game and like signing all these agreements. You know how
I
many
mean,
like
we
contracts like you sign before you even start a game?
Yeah, and the amount of times where they expect you to read those walls of text, and I'm just like, yo, get out of my face. Let me just scroll to the bottom of this as quickly as possible so I can click this damn tick and then get out of there.
Right. And user license agreements. You don't really own
Oh,
your games anymore.
yeah,
Um,
and then sometimes if you're playing online, you have to sign into a thing just to be able to get in to play the game.
yeah.
I think while like our generation was like the last of the people that, still got to play games and like, that sort of okay, I take this out of the case, I put it
Mhm.
in, and then it's there. If it's busted or has some sort of glitches, screw it. It's there, and that's how either get around it or you don't. But now there's just like so many complications to entry with like, a handful of exceptions to the rule. So
Hey, and even in 2008, I believe that was Devil May Cry 4 that came out. And then like I think PlayStation 3 had like a 15 gig patch or something. And then yeah, like and then like you watch it download in
oh
real
yeah.
time. And like whereas like Xbox 360 players are just like you get the game, you pop the disc, you start playing it. Ha ha ha. Like and then like I think the discourse at the time, what happened to just popping the game and playing it? And then now, like, and then 2020s just looked at 2008 and said, "Wait, hold my beer," right? Like,
Man, it's a rarity when you can play a game and there's not like a day one patch. That's just like pretty crazy. I
Mhm.
mean, I guess I don't really play too many games that require that too much anymore, but there are like a lot of games that well, enough games where there's still at least like patches for like new seasons or random stuff. So the game has changed. It's got, I don't know, winter, theme to it. So you'll
Yeah,
have to update this how many, months down the line. So I'm like, ugh, okay, fair enough.
I
Luckily, most of that
agree.
stuff just does it when I'm not online. So it's just like you turn the thing on. Oh, your game's updated. Sick. I didn't have to watch no bars go.
Yeah, and with Switch 2 coming out in the future, like I don't know, like are we still is the Nintendo just like sign off to be the last company to have like physical games available? Like is it all gonna be digital again now? And that's pretty much it. Like yeah, goodbye to an era and yeah, goodbye to like any type of ownership. Like now it's just you're licensed, you're a participant.
I mean, I guess so. I mean, I don't know how like easy like piracy will be, but I feel like that's just gonna be on the increase for like a lot of like older material.
The new age of pirates was born.
Cue the One Piece music. Sure, let's go. That'd be
The
fun.
treasure is like we have it all for you up here.
Oh no.
Well, you know.
I'm gonna be thinking about that afterwards.
Well, for One Piece fans, yes, like second part of Egghead's coming out April 6th. So there's that.
Hype. I mean, when I eventually get there, I guess I'm like 50,000 episodes behind, probably like closer to 400, but I'll get there eventually.
Oh, yeah. Gets better.
Yeah, man. I think I have one other thing that I'd want to bring up, like, before we bring this episode to a close, and that is this recent story that I saw while I was at work. I was just lurking around on comicbookmovie.com as you do, and I saw this little story about there being another Resident Evil film being developed. Imagine my I'm not even sure if you call it disdain. I think I just rolled my eyes because, for those who aren't aware, the Resident Evil franchise, which, was born in the realm of horror and then sort of expanded to action and sort of rides this fine line between action and horror, depending on which entry we're talking about. But they're a series of pretty cool games. And, there's various spin-offs and there's also a number of adaptations. A lot of it is bad. Now, I still admit that the first film from Paul W. Sanderson wasn't too bad. While it doesn't follow the story of the games at all, I think it has like decent atmosphere and there's certain elements with the video games that were like translated in there that was interesting. But from number two onwards, with honestly number two being an underrated one in my opinion, just because it's the closest one to any of the bloody games, with it following the story at least as closely as you could get to Resident Evil like 2 and 3 in terms of having certain characters and plot points. I think from there, just the focus on the character Alice and all of the extra nonsense that they did with all their original characters, somehow bringing in video game characters, but also making poor use of them. By the time it was over with the final chapter, I was so tired. And I watched all of those films a few years ago within a few days slash weeks of each other. But then when they said, oh, yeah, we're going to try and do Resident Evil again, so we're going to do it correct. We're going to, get a new cast. It's going to be based on like, material that you know of with the Spencer Mansion and like the Raccoon City Police Station. I saw the first trailer and I was like, the sets look a little small. This looks like it's really on a budget, but I'm gonna give it a try. And then I saw that film in 2021 and it was one of the most horrifically bad things I've ever seen. This was more faithful to the games with very specific locations, characters, and even moments from like those old PlayStation games. But when you take all those elements out of the equation, what you're left with is something that is so poorly written, poorly characterized, did not have the budget to try and do what it did, and tried too hard to condense three games worth of stories into one movie when they should have just did Resident Evil 1 and the Spencer Mansion. I don't understand how it's that hard. The film offended me. It made me angry. But anyway, then you had the Netflix TV show, and less said about that, the better. I saw the first episode and I was tapped out. I saw clips and I saw reviews online, and I knew I didn't miss much. R.I.P. Lance Reddick. You were the best thing in that show, a shining light in a sea of trash. But anyway, getting back to the point at hand, Resident Evil, I want them to do well with this franchise because it's so ripe for opportunity to tell some really fun stories in live action. And they have apparently tapped the man who made Barbarian to be the new person to helm this upcoming project. Now, while I don't believe there is too much in the way of details, it is said that Zach Kreger, at least I think that's how you say his name, who directed Barbarian, will be the writer and director of this new project. However, apparently there's some sort of bidding war to see who is going to get the option to make and distribute this film.
Mhm.
Now, all I want is just to go back to basics. Let's just go game by game and just go with Resident Evil 1 with the stars team, keep it simple, keep it tight, and put some bloody budget behind this damn thing for the love of man.
Mhm.
Because I don't know if any of you guys have seen the film Civil War from last year, the film from Alex Garland. There was a sequence towards the end of that film where there's a riot going on with a lot of gunfire and chaos going on in Washington, D.C. And that sequence at night has some of the most beautiful firefights I've seen, but also just controlled chaos. And I saw there what I would like the chaos in Raccoon City to look like. If it looked half as good as all that going on, ooh, impossible to try and get done because I don't know how much time and effort, some of these studios would want to put into Resident Evil like that. But Resident Evil has a certain level of scale to it, whether you're talking about, some of the more secluded locations or certain things that require like, a more city-wide event. But I feel like, with the right kind of people, you could make that stuff look good. It's all about time and effort. I want them to put as much care and attention into this like they do with The Last of Us, but
Mhm.
obviously The Last of Us is a very, very different kind of thing because that's a very narrative-driven thing. And whilst Resident Evil has its stories, it depending on like which game and which incarnation you're talking about, things can go from being like pretty dark and interesting to being kind of like silly and goofy. And sometimes in the same game, it really just depends. But with the right tonal balance, they could make it work. I just want it to work. And the Barbarian, like, man, is a pretty good choice. Barbarian, I didn't love that film, but I think it had like a lot of good elements where his expertise could lend itself well to Resident Evil. But we'll see. I mean, Vincent, what chime in?
Well, to be honest with you, like what we've had three different takes of Resident Evil, the Paul W.S. Anderson one, the 2021 one that you've absolutely enjoyed, and of course
No.
the Netflix adaptation. And like no, just looking at like what we have, just like all the ingredients that we have on the table. So we don't have like a studio yet, but then you have Zach Krieger, and Barbarian was a fantastic film. It had that claustrophobic element to it that really like gave like a lot of that creeping anticipation for that horror, which really worked. And of course the performances were great. You had the subversion of Bill Skarsgård being not a creeper like a creeper monster, but then like that really played into us because like this guy's up to no good. He's Bill Skarsgård for Christ's sakes. And then and you have Justin Long, like if you see like how he was tortured in Tusk, right? You're going like how like oh my God, like how do you get behind this guy, right? And then like he's portrayed as like the complete opposite of what Justin Long usually portrays. So I'm just going like yeah, he subverted a lot of the genres, but at the same time, I don't know if this is a popular opinion or like whatever. Like my opinion is like just stop making the Spencer Mansion saga, like even all the way up to Resident Evil 6 or 4, like just quit all that and go directly to Resident Evil 7. Honest to God. Like you have the Barbarian film, and if you've played Resident Evil 7, you have that um, you know, until it goes off the rails. But still, you have that you have that guy who's just, he got married and he's just looking for his wife. It's a very simple story where, like what happened to my wife? Where did she go? She went to this creepy ass mansion. I guess I'm going home now. Credits roll. No, but like jokes aside, right? Like you have that, yeah, you have that fish out of water person, like exploring something that they shouldn't explore the same way you do at like at an Airbnb rental, right? Like you see a basement thing and you're like, I think I'm just not gonna give a good review and move on with my life, I guess. But yeah, yeah, he has that creep factor. And in terms of I have, like what else has Zach Krieger done besides Barbarian, right? Like but like just from Barbarian alone, I would say like he's perfect to make an adaptation of Resident Evil 7 because that's basically the whole premise of it all. Like fish out of water guy trying to survive this like horrendous situation. Uh
Yeah, no, I totally forgot. Like that would be a pretty good starting point because Resident Evil 7 has been out for so long now that I feel it's become part of like the minds of a lot of gamers who have experienced that like with that creepy ass family, that claustrophobic feeling. And each of those family members have their own little like parts to play within that like story along with is it Ethan's wife is it Mia? Is that her name? I forgot.
Mia, yeah, the daughter's Rose. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that whole thing was especially during the first portion of that game when you're like playing it for the first time, it's just insane just especially because it's in first person. So it feels very intense when a lot of that stuff is happening. And because it's so dimly lit in there, you don't know what's happening until it happens, especially the first time around. It's like just crazy. So yeah, I feel it's always cool when there's like a adaptation on the horizon where you actually have someone who fits the bill in terms of they would be able to add something to this franchise in a way that feels like logical and tangible as opposed to complete unknowns or people that are just like, well, I don't know how enthusiastic you are about the franchise. And obviously, you don't have to be a fan of a franchise in order to work on things. Like, talk
Hmm.
to Tony Gilroy, who went
Of
about
course.
and made Andor.
Yeah.
But in this sense, I feel like there's certain times where, adaptations, you get people on board and you're just like, well, no offense, but you have no business being here. You just feel like you're hired help just to try and get this thing out the door.
Yeah.
But with someone with a little bit of cachet, like, is it the Barbarian director? I'm like, okay, I feel like you could actually have a specific vision for this to make something work. And yeah, sometimes you don't have to go directly, adapting things. You can just take pieces of, the gaming franchise like Resident Evil, because there's so many things that they've done over the years. They could just like go completely new, but then, implement certain other game characters and pieces. It just depends on how they wanted to do it, really. I just want something good for the love of man.
Well,
But
here's
yeah,
to
this,
hoping. Yeah. I'm
yeah,
on that fence of wait and see. And I guess that's basically for me for everything. And to be honest with you, like it's worked out pretty well. Like I come in, like I am surprised a lot more than anything, because my expectations are really low. But yeah, like
that's fair.
but then again, like even if my like like you get your expectations to a certain degree, like same way with Sonic 3, right? Like theme of our podcast right now. Yeah, like the moment you build an expectation, it's really hard to get below that, like you just have to meet it. And yeah, with Resident Evil, like I'm not expecting anything at all. Like in fact, like maybe I'm just expecting it to be bad at this point, right? So who knows?
Fair. I think I'm still in that sort of mindset, which we discussed in the first episode, where, video game adaptations are still in that sort of, early to mid 2000s phase where they're still working themselves out, where you have like, some successes, some failures, and some that are like, middling so-so. But I feel like there is still like a slow increase, like, like one of the sort of charts where it's going a bit down a bit, but it's still on the rise.
Yeah.
So, with a little bit more refinement and like certain people taking the reins for some of these projects, and if you had like, I don't know, while it doesn't have to be, but if you had more acclaimed people, like, more acclaimed directors in film and TV that took on some of these projects, I think, once you start getting some of those people in here, sort of like when comic book movies started getting certain directors that you didn't expect to be taking on these projects, that will change the sort of vibe, because then you'll have more people interested who weren't considering this, but because this person's working on it, okay, I'm going to run over here and see what's going on. And they could lend an interesting, like, different dimension to this than, what could be done with a different director. So I'm feeling like there's still a wind of change that's happening. It's slow, but there
Mhm.
is some momentum.
Oh yeah. And I just hope that Borderlands does not win the Razzies, because so it can be like a complete failure. Can't even win worst. I'm hoping Madam Web would win worst, would win the
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Razzie. There's
We'll
a bit of
see.
enjoyment that I had with Madam Web being so bad, so good. I think I watched it twice already. I don't know
What?
why.
Oh,
Yeah,
I,
man.
I don't have anything to add to that, man. I mean, the ADR in that movie alone just bothered the hell out of me.
Hey, if it wins Razzies, well deserved.
I guess so. Yeah. Um, well, I don't know if I have anything else to add. I just want to check. Do you have anything else you wanted to say before we wrap up?
I said what I said.
Clearly. Oh my gosh, yeah. Um, but yeah, I guess like, come back to the next episode and I guess we'll discuss like who won the Razzies at that point.
Yeah, at that point. Yeah. Any other besides Last of Us 2, any other adaptations up in the air? not so much.
I mean, I think I'll say what I said with the previous episode. I'm still waiting for at least some sort of visual confirmation about Mortal Kombat 2.
Of
Um,
course.
I've heard again all these interesting little interviews. I want to know how they're going to handle the cast. If we're going to be running into Mortal Kombat Annihilation territory where they attempt to do too much and it sucks, or if they've learned the mistakes from the previous film and they're attempted to make something that's like a little more focused, has a tournament,
Hmm.
honors the source material, but does some interesting things. The marketing for this film is interesting because it's similar to the previous one where, there was just bare talk for ages, for months. And then just a few, I'd say like what, maybe 3 or 4 months out from the actual release, you started getting images. And then the first trailer came out, I think within 2 to 3 months before the actual release. So I'm thinking that they might just be holding their cards close to the chest until like maybe, I don't know, the summer. But because like good old Jeff Keighley has like the power of like, deciding to release anything gaming related, he might have something cooked up for, the Summer Games Fest because he's pretty cool with like those guys at NetherRealm and Ed Boon. So since Ed Boon is still like, overseeing the project a little bit, he might still drop something in relation to the game, like, adaptations as well. Because he did drop the stuff about Secret Level, I think, a
Hmm.
little while ago. So I'm hoping if there isn't anything official from Warner Brothers before that, then it could drop at like Summer Game Fest. That'd be pretty interesting, I guess. But we'll see. I just needed my Mortal Kombat 2. Just give me. That's all I want.
Hopefully, it doesn't get us far as Resident Evil. It's take 4 right now, like yeah, let's try a fourth time.
I don't need it. Yeah. Um. All right. Well, on that note, I guess we'll end like this episode for like this time being. Thank you for listening as always, like ladies and gents. And if you have anything to speak about on the comments we discussed, just drop them in the comment section below, or hit us up on Instagram. I'm here as like Hypersonic55 and the from Pixels to Celluloid thing. And Vincent, is there anything you want to plug before you run away?
Just wanted to apologize again for that little blunder. I will do my research next time.
And where can they find you, Vincent, online?
You can catch me at my personal Instagram at Vincent Trinidad in Instagram, or yeah, you can check my articles out at onemoregame.ph, where I'm reviewing a few games coming out this month. Next month, what I just released the review for Tales of Graces Remastered, and yeah, hopefully a few more games coming out soon.
Sick. All right. Well, with that, all that being said, thank you for listening, ladies and gents, and peace out.
Peace.